Hi, I'm Ricky, and I'm 27 years old. Last month, my 30-year-old Alexandrian parakeet, Mr., passed away. Years ago, my dad found Mr. in a bird rescue shelter a couple of years before I was born and decided to adopt it. Mr. was only 6 or 8 weeks old when he met him and had never lived with a family. Our family was his first family, so it was easier for him to bond easily with my parents and everyone else in the house. Growing up was really fun for me because Mr. was a part of my childhood. He was like an elder brother to me, and he never got tired of calling my name. Even though my dad was Mr.'s favorite, Mr. and I became good buddies as I grew older. Our relationship was natural because I didn't do much to get Mr.'s attention. He just loved me. Of all my siblings, Mr. would prefer to fly to my lap or perch on my shoulder. He felt very comfortable with me, which helped us build a solid bond. I loved him so much that it became my sole responsibility to feed and play with him every day. Funnily enough, Mr. considered himself to be human. He could do almost everything we did, and he was super bright. He knew everybody's name, including our dog, Choco, whom he didn't get along with. He loved to sing, and often, he would sing along with one of my dad's favorite TV shows. Although he was annoying and noisy sometimes, I still loved him very much. He was my best friend and companion and stood by me through thick and thin. I know birds are meant to be in cages, but Mr. was different. His cage was open 99% of the time, and he loved flying around the house. His cage came in handy only when it was time to sleep. And he would sleep on his cage and not in it. Funny little guy. His favorite fruits were apples, berries, and grapes. If you allowed him, he could eat them daily. On the days he was happy, he would say hello until your ears bled, and if you refused to chat with him, he would just follow you around. My teenage and early adult years were fun-filled because of Mr. He was so brilliant that he could differentiate glass, metal, and rubber by tapping his beak on them. Honestly, I don't think many people know how intelligent parrots can be until we train them. Whenever I left the house for work or school, I always felt sad, but whenever I returned home, my happiness would return because Mr. would fly to the door to greet me. He always made me feel so important, and I treasured every moment. After college, my parents asked if I wanted to take Mr. for a while. They claimed he was torturing them by calling my name every day, and they could not stand it anymore. The poor lad must have missed me so much and couldn't hold it in. Since I lived alone and my apartment allowed pets, I traveled to my hometown to get Mr. Now that I share my story, I really regret doing that. If I had insisted that I would only visit Mr., I know he would still be alive. After I moved Mr. to his new home, he got familiar with the house, and we continued to bond as best friends. So, there's a job I applied for, and I passed the interview. Me, alongside a couple of my colleagues who were hired, were called to begin our training, and the email came in unexpectedly. Because I had very little time to pack and travel for my training, I didn't have the time to take Mr. back to my parents, so I asked one of my neighbors, who claimed he had a parrot once, to help me look after Mr. for a couple of days until I returned. The training was only for a week, and I knew that I'd be back to look after my baby in a twinkle of an eye. A day after I traveled, I ensured that I called my neighbor to check on Mr. and find out how he was doing. I texted him thrice daily to remind him to feed Mr. and cover him up at night. In addition, I gave him $100 for his inconvenience, with the expectation that he would keep to his own end of the deal. But from the 5th day, whenever I called him to check on Mr., I noticed he wasn't taking my calls and didn't care to return them either. He left all my WhatsApp messages on read and didn't respond to any. When all of this happened, I suspected something was wrong, but there was nothing I could do to find out until my training was complete. After my training, I returned home as soon as possible, and that's when I found out that the worst had happened. Mr. was dead, and my neighbor's negligence killed him. The last thing I expected was to return home to a dead pet because someone thought it was nothing to leave him all alone for almost 4 days. My best friend died due to cold and starvation. I found him ice cold and clawed to his cage, which looked dirty and unkempt. My neighbor claimed he was out of his apartment for 3.5 days because something came up, and he didn't expect that Mr. would die in just 3 days and some hours of no food, water, companionship, and exposure to cold. I was so heartbroken and devastated. More than anything, I wanted my kids to meet Mr. and have the same relationship I had with him. The hardest part was telling my parents that Mr. was gone. After I had mourned him for hours, I ended up driving his body back to my hometown so my parents and siblings could hold him one more time before we buried him. He lived with me for only 3 months, which were some of my life's happiest months. Before he came, I was always so lonely, and bringing him over to my place was one of my best decisions. Somehow, I still blame myself for his death. Maybe if I was not dumb enough to entrust him to my selfish neighbor, he would have still been alive. Mr. was like an older brother, and I loved him so much. It still feels like a dream that I will never get to sing along with him again, have our long chats, answer his questions, or feed him his favorite fruits. I promised him that I would bring him his favorite treats from my trip, and I disappointed him. My parents have tried to be strong, but I don't think I will ever get used to Mr.'s absence. Now, I will never see him introduce himself to strangers in a goofy way while saying, "Hi, I'm Mr. What's your name?" If anyone had told me this day would come so soon, I would have probably punched that person in the face. My eyes are filled with tears now as I share this. It's been a month since his demise, and yet the pain still feels like it all happened yesterday. I failed him and don't think I will ever forgive myself. Maybe in my next life, I'll be smart enough to not entrust anyone with my pet. I miss you, Mr. Ricky will always love you.